Welcome back, guys. Today I want to talk about something that I've been thinking a lot about for no particular reason, because I don't plan on trading this car in. But if you've got a 2010s era muscle car, is it worth trading into something newer? Or does it just make sense to keep it and run it because it's good enough? And I actually think this is a pretty cool topic of conversation, and here's why. So, in about 2010, when the Mustang and the Challenger had came out, or call it 2013, 14, when they had been out for a few years, and the Mustang had been kind of refreshed out of the 4.6 era and became the 5.0, the Coyote motors and stuff. We saw what I'm going to call a revolution, or at least a big evolution in muscle car technology and performance levels and what the expectation was. Here's what I mean by that. So in that 2010s era, almost every car started coming with Brembo brakes, or at least they were starting to phase them in, right? And that was a big thing. None of the American cars ever had, muscle cars had any sort of brakes that were anything to write home about. C5 Corvettes, the base model C5 Corvette, had regular brakes even, right? So this was a very new thing for modern cars. The other thing is, if we kind of, go to the interior here, we're going to pop the hood to talk about that later, but they started to make the interiors better. Now, this is the part where they really didn't go too crazy, in my opinion, until the 2020s, but in the 2010s, they were better, right? Like this 1LE package has Alcantara on the wheel and the shifter. It's got seats, they're okay, but they're not great. There's still a lot of plastic in the dash, but it does have a screen, which was, for 2013 was actually, you'd be surprised, not a ton of cars had screens even at that point. But you've got a little bit more kind of modernized gauge cluster. You've got a little screen in the gauge cluster. These are all things we take for granted nowadays, but back then were like pretty evolutionary in that case. Also, heated seats. The gauge cluster's down there for more data for doing like a track day or something. But that being said, so using that word track day here, that was the big thing like with this car, right? So this is a 2SS platform car, but it has the 1LE package. And what that is it is the wider wheels and tires. It is the improved, thicker sway bars, better shocks. It's the strut tower brace that you see right there. So, wow, this thing's disgusting. I don't know how this got so dirty. Anyway, strut tower brace, and all of these things had just never happened. Like if you go to the 90s Camaro or a 2000s Mustang before this came out, they were straight line cars, really, right? The Mustangs had the solid rear axle, and they didn't even have a suspension package really made to make a solid rear axle handle particularly well. They did okay, but they weren't great out of the box anyway. The cars were not really engineered to have like super stiff chassis, and the cooling packages required to actually go on a track day and do more than just like a drag strip where it's a short burst. So there were things that just they didn't have and didn't do. So by this era, they've all of a sudden incorporated all these things. I mean, this is a track day prepped car. It's meant to do track days with. And they missed the mark on a couple spots. For example, the oil cooler is notoriously weak on these. So you've got to really add an aftermarket one if you want to keep your oil temps down. But that being said, like the pedigree was there. Again, it has the brakes. It's got like a strut tower brace. It had the better shocks. It had the short throw shifter and the lower rear end ratio and the thicker sway bars. This thing was really designed to do stuff, to be a true like sports car, not just a muscle car, go fast in a straight line, make a lot of noise. It even had some more refinements like the dual mode exhaust and just things that you would really see more in a German or Italian car at the time, not an American car. So the reason I bring all this up is because if you fast forward to modern times and we look at a brand new, let's look at a 2023 Corvette or Camaro, right before they discontinued the Camaro line. Sad. But if you look at the newer ones, now that's only one generation different than this car. And here's the deal, right? The LT motor makes another 30 horsepower and torque, give or take. The wheels and tires for a 1LE are roughly the same. The brakes are much bigger on the 6th gen, that I will say. The transmission brand and all that kind of stuff is all the same. It's all Tremec. The drive line's very similar. Not the same, but very similar. Suspension's better on the 6th gens. The whole chassis is a little bit lighter. It is an upgrade. However, you got to ask yourself, like, how much of an upgrade is it really? Other than just getting a newer car, now that this has 100,000 miles on it, 103 actually, you're not really going to get a huge performance difference day to day. So on the road, I mean, you could dump a light cam in this thing and get the horsepower. So that's no issue. Even just tuning it would probably get you kind of close to a stock LT car, especially if you did headers. So the power is kind of a moot point, but stock for stock, this is definitely slower, by a little bit. But handling wise, yes, on a track, a 1LE will smoke this thing because a modern 1LE is much more of a track day focused car. There's an aero package that like this doesn't really have and stuff like that. However, for the layman, will it be more fun? I don't know, maybe, but like this is pretty fun too on the track. And part of what makes it fun is its imperfection, right? Like I think it's a lot of fun to slide a 90s Camaro around a track because the imperfection makes it a challenge and makes it fun. So sometimes too much performance could almost be bad in that sense. But anyway, so is it different enough though to justify the newer car? That's a good question. We're going to hold the table that thought. So let's look at the Mustangs, right? Now there's basically a Mustang. The newest Mustangs are 2 generations newer than this, okay? Now, let's put some perspective here. This was a $42,000 car in 2013. A Mustang Dark Horse right now is 70 to 80 grand. Now, I know this might sound kind of crazy, but that's actually not that much more expensive. I'll have to pull up the inflation calculator here, but I believe that that's probably about $60,000 or $65,000 in today's money would be 42 back then. And the Dark Horse is getting you an even wider wheel and tire package than this, way bigger brakes. It's basically a 1LE package for a Mustang, but it is also getting you a strut tower brace, but it's giving you 500 horsepower, so it's more power than a 1LE, this one or a current 1LE car. So the Dark Horse, for example, and this is why I'm comparing it, is this car's predecessor, the 6th gen or successor, the 6th gen Camaro, then on steroids. So it's like 5th gen 1LE, 6th gen 1LE, Dark Horse. And they're all kind of the same idea of car, right? An NA V8 sports car meant for like track days. That's why I'm using this comparison. The Dark Horse is the spiritual predecessor that would be a 7th generation 1LE Camaro. That's as close as we can get because they don't make a 7th gen 1LE Camaro. Okay, fine. With that being said, I think the upgrade from this car would be one of 2 options then, right? Really, your only options that make sense, in my opinion, are a Dark Horse Mustang or a ZL1 6th gen Camaro, because either of those things get you a good bump in, straight line speed, and then with good track day handling for the Dark Horse's case, the ZL1 also like good track day handling, and then a much bigger bump in power, which would be pretty cool. The ZL1 1LE 6th gen you could bump into, but then that becomes such a very track focused car and like very extreme car. I think it fills a different purpose than this. Like I genuinely daily drive this. I have 100,000 miles on it, and I don't know that you'd comfortably and economically want to daily your ZL1 1LE. You've got a ground effects package on it that's going to hurt your daily ability a little bit. And God forbid you do get in an accident. It's just that much more expensive of a car and all that kind of stuff. Harder to find parts for, et cetera, et cetera. So you could do it, but that's an option. And I guess my point is, and because I've had this thought before, it's kind of tricky in that I just like the Chevy muscle cars better than Fords. Like, I mean, the Dark Horse is cool, and Mustangs they're cool cars. I'm not saying they're not. I just like the bow tie for some reason. I like the pushrod V8s. It's just kind of my thing. I like the Tremor transmission in these. I'm a big fan of this car. And what's funny, though, is that I just don't know how to upgrade this right now and I'm not ready to upgrade it right now anyway, but if I wanted to, because they don't make a 7th gen Camaro. I'm a big proponent of any car you buy. I don't care if it's a freaking Honda Civic or it's an F-250 or it's this car or whatever. I'm a big proponent of trying to jump at least over a generation. So this is a 5th generation. Don't buy a 6th, buy a 7th generation, because in that way you're getting multiple new things. You've given them time to develop the car 2 times over, and you're not just spending all this money and getting like a marginal improvement. So that's where I really think, for me, it would kind of have to be dark horse or nothing because of that. Even a 6th gen ZL1, it'd be a super cool car, but I just couldn't picture myself spending that much money on a car that's design-wise not that much newer. This car was refreshed in 2013, I believe, 2012 or 2013. The 1LE came out in 2012. So yeah, actually it was in 2012. So it was refreshed in 2012. Even a 2023 ZL1 or something technically was refreshed midway through, but it's essentially the same car as a 2016 Camaro. Unlike in the 5th gen, they changed the steering wheel, they changed the gauges and stuff like that. I don't think they didn't do any of that in the 6th gen. It's much more similar anyway, I guess is my point. So I feel like I'm getting a 3-year upgrade. I'm going from a 13 to a 16 by, design language anyway, which is a little bit of a buzzkill. So that's where the dark horse I think would come in handy, because it is kind of that 2-generation upgrade. But anyway, with all that being said, I want to hear in the comments, what do you guys think? Are you in a similar position? Maybe you have a 2010 Mustang. Maybe you've got a 2008, 2010 Challenger or something. I want to hear your perspective. I think the same argument and a different argument could be made for those cars, right? For a Mustang, you're going from solid axle to independent rear end. If you get a newer Mustang or a newer Camaro, that's a big jump and a big positive and negative depending on what you're doing with the car. The Challengers, came out with quite a bit different interiors and engines, even though the chassis ran for so long. So that's like another situation where maybe it's worth upgrading, maybe it's not. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. God bless America, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.